This is an Eye on Annapolis bonus podcast.
Well, this morning we are sitting down with James King, who is the CEO of Titan Hospitality, which is probably not a name known to too many people, but it is certainly the parent corporation of something that is probably known to everybody. But they are the owner of Blackwall Hitch, Smashing Grapes, and Blackwall Barn and Lodge up in Gambrills. And thank you very much for inviting us into your office. I see we've got a stash of tequila over my left shoulder, and I'm thinking this is probably going to be the best damn podcast we've ever done.
There you go. Help yourself. Thanks for having me.
What we really wanted to talk about is that you are one of the larger restaurant groups in the area, and you've been through the ringer in the last 2.5 years, and that's probably putting it very mildly. When we entered into this pandemic, you had a couple franchises in the Greene Turtle, and got the phone call from the governor, said, "Yeah, no, you're out of business." And you know, somehow throughout this whole thing, you have persevered, you've expanded. You've faced all sorts of obstacles there, and you really do have a good pulse on what's happening in the restaurant industry. And you, before we started recording, we talked about that you even had some experience. Well, the Greene Turtles were a franchise, but also in the, as opposed to the higher end food, you had fast foods experience. Mm-hmm. So you've really got a great sort of overall picture of what the heck is happening. And we wanted to sort of touch base and figure out what's going on.
Sure. Well, it's certainly been a difficult couple of years, no question. Our industry, and certainly there's many industries that were negatively impacted by the pandemic. I think the restaurant industry, it would be hard to argue that we weren't one of the most impacted. And, you know, we're really coming into what we consider to be a second phase of the pandemic. The first phase was being shut down, carry out only, 50% capacity, and then 25% capacity, then outdoor dining, and then, you know, we went through a dozen different iterations of what our business model looked like. And so now we're in the second phase where it's just as challenging, but different challenges. We have revenue, we have people coming through the doors, which is great, but we have an incredible staffing shortage and labor challenge that we're dealing with right now. We've got inflation and prices going through the roof coming in the back door, and we've got logistical and supply chain issues that have become a huge hurdle for us every single day. And so we've really entered into this second phase where the daily challenges are very different than what they were a year or two ago, but just as difficult to navigate through. And so we are seeing the general public wanting to get back out and spend money and gather with friends and family that they haven't seen and rebook birthday parties and graduation parties. And so all that's fantastic. Our challenge now is that we've lost about a third of the industry from employees in the industry have just gone on to do different things. They couldn't pay their bills. They couldn't feed their families. Understandably, they had to look for other forms of employment. Some went to third-party delivery, Uber, some went to Amazon, some found jobs where they could work from home and watch their kids. And so, unfortunately, we haven't seen those individuals migrate back into the industry as we all thought we would. And so I think the industry as a whole, and it's not just here in this region, but I've been traveling a lot lately, and it's the same way in Nashville, it's the same way in Dallas, it's the same way in Florida. We really have a challenge industry-wide on staffing the restaurants for the volume that we're dealing with, which I can tell you there's nothing more frustrating for an operator after going through the 2 years that we did and losing all of that money and being on the verge of bankruptcy, than to have the money in front of you, but you can't take it because you don't have the staff to adequately do it.
I mean, what's the answer? I mean, I get that people, you know, we all need to eat.
Yeah.
And so we do take other jobs or whatnot. And I imagine that people some are sitting there saying, well, gosh, you know, why was I busting my chops serving? Others are like, now I'm settled in this. I don't know if the next pandemic is coming. I mean, that's got to be a very real fear for somebody. What's happening with the industry? You know, you guys are pretty robust, but it's, you know, I mean, I imagine going back to a serving position or any position within a restaurant, you're sitting thinking, well, they're open, but, you know, are they going to be able to make it after the hit they've taken for 2 years? I mean, what's the solution to this?
So I would say it's a couple things. I mean, I will say that our hourly employees are making more money than they ever have. The feedback that I get, I mean, the ones that are in the trenches right now, you know, they're loving it. They're tired, they're working a lot, but a lot of them have taken the attitude of this isn't going to last and I'm going to make as much money as I possibly can. We've seen wages increase in our industry fivefold, quite frankly. The tips that the servers and the bartenders are making, these guys are walking out with several $100s a night. Even our hourly employees have all gotten a 30% pay increase from the time the pandemic started to now, simply because the market demands it. And at the end of the day, if you need people in the kitchen, you're going to pay them what you got to pay them. And they have options right now. And so it's definitely a workers' labor force right now. They can demand their pay. So I think, one of the solutions is letting people know how lucrative it can be to come back into the industry right now. There are positives about schedule-wise. It's somewhat flexible, but there's negatives too. It's weekends, it's evenings, it's long nights. And what we've tried to do, and we started this prior to the pandemic, fortunately, so we had some runway. We restructured the company several years ago with putting our culture first. And we decided that if we wanted to, A, attract, but B, retain good employees, it had to be more than just the money, right? We had to provide a work environment in which they were treated like family, and that, yes, people do look at the bottom line and the paycheck, but a lot of people will tell you that I would rather give up a few dollars and work in a work environment where I'm respected. I like my coworkers. We work as a family. We work as a team. So we really focus on building a positive workplace culture, and we do that in a number of manners, but it's a daily focus. We start the day and we end the day with that, and we believe that that's the solution, long-term, short-term, and long-term, to finding quality employees and keeping them, because retention is important.
You're not alone in that. I mean, I know that Anthony and Michael with the Irish Restaurant Group, Galway Bay, and those guys, I mean, they have shut down on days because I'll paraphrase, but they said, man, we're beating the shit out of our employees. Yep. They need a life, so we're closing.
Yeah.
We're cutting off our lifeblood to let them recoup, because ultimately that does translate into bitter employees, mad employees, and that turns around to me sitting there enjoying the meal.
Right.
And you look at it's Alex, I think it's Smith that owns the Atlas Restaurant Group. He went to a $15 minimum wage, I believe, for every employee, and that again is in response to this, I suppose, for those nights where the Wednesday night where the shift may be real light, you're at least guaranteed a living minimum wage.
Yeah, I mean, I think that looks better on paper than reality, because most of the people that work for them are making $18 or $19 an hour. So at the end of the day, that's great. But I will tell you that ultimately, you have to put your employees first. The customer experience is important. Obviously, it's the lifeline. People want to come in, they want to have great food, they want to have great service. But if you're running your employees on the ground, how can you really provide that? And so we've taken some steps within the company. First and foremost, we give a gift every month to every single employee. We have over 500 employees. 1 month it's a gas card. 1 month it's we give them something to Target, a gift card to Target, a Visa gift card. Every month we give a gift to every single employee in the company, just to show them, hey, we care about you guys. And it's not always necessarily about how big the dollar amount is, but it's something, right? It's a meal. It's a half a tank of gas. It's a little shopping for your kids. And so we try to go out of our way to do things that really are tangible, that they can see and feel, instead of us just telling them we care about them. I think everyone says that, and we have good workplace culture, but what are you actually doing to foster that? We have events with the staff. We give all of our salaried managers, in addition to all of their time off, they don't work their birthday and they don't work their spouse's birthday, no matter what day it falls on. So we try to find those little things like that we can do throughout the course of the year. But I do think it makes a difference, and it all adds up. The little things add up. And when they take a step back and reflect upon, could I go across the street to another restaurant? The answer is yes, because at the end of the day, every restaurant's hiring right now. But am I going to walk into the same work environment with the same people and the same company that puts me first? And Anthony is one of those guys who gets it and does that. And I think those are the operators who ultimately are going to be successful coming out of this, because employee retention is probably the most important thing we can do right now. We've got to keep the people we have and then add to that.
Sure. Well, it's obviously also a cost for you to train them in the Blackwall or the smashing way.
Yep, absolutely.
To do that.
And our training really, because of the quality quality of candidate that we're hiring, we used to have a 6 to 8 day training program for somebody to come in, learn the system, and get on the floor. That's now turned into 2 to 3 weeks because we're hiring people, quite frankly, who have never opened a bottle of wine before. They've never worked in the industry before, and it just takes more time. Now, the good news is we're finding some incredible people, and we're falling in love with them, and they're doing a great job, and they don't bring any bad habits, and so we can train them our way, which is great. But it just takes a little bit more time, money, and energy to do that because the pool of employees that you're pulling from don't tend to be those seasoned 12-year restaurant veterans that walk through the door.
Right.
So it's kind of a changing of the guard. It's a new generation coming into the industry, and you got to train them.
Well, a lot of things have really changed as it goes over. I mean, I know there's been, and I've seen this, and I live this, I guess, if you will, and I don't know whether I'm using the right term, but the fast casual restaurants, which will like the Greene Turtles, the TGI Fridays, and I just wrote down some notes here that, I mean, you look at Applebee's is gone, Macaroni is gone, the Greene Turtles are mostly gone, and people, myself included, have no problem paying, I mean, not exorbitant prices, but more prices for solid, good food combined with the service. I mean, you look at, the Tuscan Grill that came in there, Chop Tank is coming in, certainly Smashing Grapes over at the mall and up at Gambril's. We've got a new one in Annapolis, Harold Black, that's coming in as well. And I think that the mindset of the consumer is probably changing. There's a difference between that $8 burger at the Greene Turtle and the $12 one or the $15 one, or with the way inflation's going, it might be a $25.
Yeah, right. Closer to 20 now. Well, I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's regional, right? So we tend to live in an area that's a bit more fluent, and we have the federal government that surrounds us, which pumps money into this area. We have taken we tend to be a little bit on the higher end, but we really focus on in some of the areas, and for instance, Watch Apple or our Smashing Grapes is a great example, or even the Blackwall Barn and Lodge and Gambril's, providing an independent dining experience in an area that's saturated with fast food and fast casual. And what we found is that, if given the opportunity, especially in some of the more suburban areas, if somebody doesn't have to get in the car and drive to downtown Annapolis, battle with parking, spend an extra 15, 20 minutes each way in the car, so there's an hour, and provide that same experience that you can get in an urban setting of a Baltimore, DC, or Annapolis in a bedroom community, they want it, right? That's incredible for them. So they can go to a Smashing Grapes, they can get a nice bottle of wine, they can listen to some live music, they're in a nice environment and decor, and they don't have to leave their neighborhood to go find that. And so that's where our business model is really looking for those areas that are underserved, and areas where people feel like, well, all we have is the Applebee's or the McDonald's or the Chick-fil-A, and saying, well, let's give them another option. And we're seeing people are willing to spend the money if you give them that experience and that total dining experience.
Sure. And with the price, with the value, with the higher end food, naturally it has to come with a service as well, to a degree. I mean, I was at a restaurant the other night, and it was, supposedly high end, and I'm like, service was real mediocre. The food I thought was mediocre. I said, you're not going to get away on decor. I said, if I'm going to spend, $140 on, dinner for two without any kind of booze and a steak, I'm going to Lunis's. And I could have gotten it at the steakhouse in Edgewater, what I got. And
I think, I have a lot of empathy for these operators, because no restaurateur wants to give you mediocre service or mediocre food.
Sure.
The challenge is they've got 3 guys in the kitchen instead of 9. They've got 2 servers taking 15 tables instead of 4. And so they're forced with some very difficult decisions to make, and we've tried to navigate through that the best we can. And what we have done is taken the mentality and the attitude of, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's important to protect our brand. And sometimes you have to leave money on the table to do that. And so if we are short-staffed on a specific Wednesday night and 2 servers call out sick, and that leaves us with 3 or 4 servers when we typically would have 8 or 9, we will slow the seating down and we will close a section. And while that's frustrating and it loses us revenue, we've taken the calculus that we want everybody who actually does sit down with us to have a fantastic experience, so that when they think about the brand, they remember that experience, as opposed to, could we have picked up an extra $1,500 that night and squeezed 10 more tables in there? Yeah, but they all would have gotten mediocre
and then you're
service
sitting
at that
over
point.
Chick-fil-A tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So it's tough. I mean, I as I said, I've been traveling a lot, and I've had a lot of conversations with restaurant owners nationally, and I'm part of the Maryland Restaurant Coalition, so we talk a lot. There's nobody I know in the industry, in any state in this country, that's above 80% staffing of where they'd like to be to 100%. Industry average right now is about 65%. So it's really, really tough, and operators coming off the heels of losing a lot of money and owing banks money and owing landlords money are now forced into making really difficult decisions on, do I try to recoup this money and get out of debt, or do I try to maintain my brand superiority and leave some money on the table? So I feel it too. I've eaten out a lot, and I felt that the quality of service and food over the last year has really declined in some of the nicest restaurants in the area, quite frankly. But I also have empathy for them, because I understand what they're going through. And when I typically would want to go out to dinner with my wife, and after being in the industry 30 years, you kind of feel like I can take a Friday night off and go out to dinner. I've now found myself back in the kitchen every Friday night working to support my team and help these guys out. So I certainly understand what everyone's going through right now.
Well, the other half on this that you're facing, the other struggle that you're facing, is staffing and maintaining the brand and everything else, but it's the supply. Okay, we're still getting there, and I'll reference Anthony and Michael again. I mean, at one point they sent out a broadcast email saying, "Hey guys, you're going to see our prices go up because here's the email we got from our suppliers saying." Yes, we've seen, I think it was something like a 25% increase in the raw goods, which, I mean, and it has to trickle up. I mean, we've got this inflation.
It's probably just as challenging as the labor shortage right now, and on a couple different fronts. Those letters that we get from our vendors, we get them weekly. And so the same letter that came a month ago that said they were going up 12%, we got one last week, they're going up another 6%. A lot of it is gasoline, right? Fuel drives everything, and
cost
so
me $300 just to get here.
Right, you can't get the product in the back door without putting it on a truck, and before the truck, it probably was on a train or a plane or a boat. And so we're seeing fuel surcharges on every invoice that we never saw before. We're seeing the actual cost of the product go up, and we're seeing inconsistency in the product. And so produce is a good example. We may order 25 items and get 22 of them. And you never know what it's going to be every week. It might be no green beans this week, no broccoli next week, no sugar snap peas this week. Oh my
God, and that changes your whole menu and your whole plan that you've got to...
Absolutely. So now the chef has to jump in and retweak specials and do things like that. And so it's really forced restaurateurs to re-engineer their menus, right? And perhaps now it says seasonal vegetables as opposed to what they want to put on the plate, right? And so, the inflation and the cost thing, we have taken price increases twice since the end of the pandemic. We try to keep them as minimal as possible. But at the end of the day, if we don't maintain our margins, we can't pay the rent, and we can't pay our employees, and we can't pay the bank. And so where does it end is the question. We hope that this will level off sooner rather than later. I think the positive thing, I guess, from a public perception standpoint for the restaurant industry, and I've had this comment 5 or 6 times from customers, is it's not any cheaper to go to a grocery store because the same thing's happening there.
No.
And so historically people would say, well, menu prices are raising, let's just eat at home. Well, eating at home these days can be just as expensive as going out to the restaurant if you order the right things. And so we're hearing from a public perception standpoint that nobody likes paying the prices, obviously, but they understand, and they're seeing it everywhere. They go to Home Depot and a 2x4 costs 4 times what it used to, and they're hiring an electrician to come to their house, and they're 9 weeks out, and it's $400 to replace a ceiling fan. So it's in every segment of the economy right now. We get hit the hardest because people, I think, look at their check at a restaurant a little bit more than they do when they're out doing their day-to-day, shopping and things. But we've maintained volume, but it does place additional pressure, to your point, on delivering, right? If you're going to pay more for a product, you expect a better, better experience, and value is something that's intrinsically embedded in everyone's mind when they purchase something. Did I get what I paid for? Was that a good value? Right?
You're so right. I was at a conference in Boston one time, and I literally missed the bus to whatever event they were doing that night. And so I asked the concierge at the hotel to recommend a good steakhouse, dime a dozen in Boston, but they found it, and it was, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but anyway, I recommend it. It was down on Boylston Street, so I go down there, sat at the bar. The bartender actually had roots in Annapolis, so we were sitting there talking and everything else, and I had, I think, 2 cocktails, and it was all a la carte and everything else, and he drops the bill down at the end. It was like $1.75, and I looked at him and went, pulled out the credit card, and I got, walking out, I said, but I don't regret it for a minute, because it was spot on. It was the service, it was the food, it was the atmosphere. Am I going there every night?
Of course, right.
But it was, I didn't feel like I was ripped off.
Yeah. And I think coming out of the pandemic, having the opportunity to go out and sit at a restaurant and be waited on and converse with friends again, or even a business meeting, is something that people miss so much. That dining out, and I understand this third-party delivery and DoorDash and all these things have changed a little bit the way people dine. I'm one of those believers that regardless of technology and third-party delivery and all those things, there's still always going to be the demand for people to be able to go out and sit down at a restaurant and have a server come take care of you and wait on you hand and foot and recommend a nice bottle of wine and give you a great experience, to give you a break from life, right? That's what really dining at a restaurant is. Just some people, it's subsistence, it's food. But I tell people you can get food anywhere these days. There's great food trucks. There's great, all kinds of cook-at-home meals, delivered packages, DoorDash. But to stay relevant, I think you've got to provide more than just a great meal, because I do think you can find that in a lot of places. We want to provide people with a getaway from life. Come out, enjoy your time, listen to a little bit of music, move to the bar after dinner. And if we can provide that total dining experience in a really nice environment with great decor, nice lighting, nice furniture, nice tables, with a really friendly staff who's on top of things, backed up by a great meal, I think we have a competitive edge over all these other things.
It's a win.
Easier to say than do. Obviously, a lot of challenges to get to that end result. But like anything in life, you just got to keep pounding away at it, and eventually you overcome your hurdles.
Well, that's true. I'll tell you, you mentioned the fuel surcharges that are showing up on your bills and stuff like that. And I was at a restaurant the other week, and there was I can't remember what they called it, but it was something cutesy, like a happiness surcharge. And it was 6% of the tab. And I was like, what the heck is this? It wasn't painfully obvious saying this is optional, but it was. There was a little website to find out what this whole little 6, and I went, it was to help pay for the health insurance and some of the benefits and perks and vacation time and stuff like that for the staff. Laudable. Everybody should have vacation and health insurance and everything else. But, my thinking is that if that burger needs to be $16, $17, let's roll it into the burger, as opposed to this nickel and dime thing. It reminds me of like the flying on the airlines now.
Right. Yeah, you're getting nickel and dime for everything. It's funny. I see it both ways. A lot of restaurants in New York City, for example, every single restaurant in New York City now adds a credit card surcharge. Credit card companies have found a way to basically be every small business owner's partner and take 3% of their revenue. 99% of transactions now are credit card. Nobody pays with cash anymore. And so the credit card fees are exorbitant. They're 3%. And pretty much every small business owner in the world doesn't have a choice but to take this on as a partner and lose 3% of revenue. New York City and Washington, D.C. and Philly have decided a lot of restaurants have decided we're going to pass on to the consumer. And I've heard feedback on both ways. And we've just now started experimenting with this, and I had an argument with a customer, and he said, why don't you just raise your menu prices like you just said? And I said to him, well, I would rather be transparent, right? At the end of the day, what you're paying for, there's a cash price and a credit card price, and if you use cash, I'm not going to charge you for that. If you pay by credit card, I'm offsetting the fee so that I don't take the loss. If I just raise my prices and you come in and pay by cash.
You're just the greedy SOB that just raises prices.
I'm just taking 3% of your bill that doesn't cost me anything that I'm not passing along. So we decided to be transparent with our customers and not just raise prices and then take all this extra money from people who are not actually making us incur fees. But I think what you're seeing and what you're kind of getting at is that it's this, restaurateurs are trying to figure out how to get creative in bringing those extra few dollars in to close the gap on all of the challenges that they're facing from increased labor. And going back to the labor piece, somebody said to me the other day, well, you must be making a lot more money because you have a lot less employees, but you're still busy. And the reality is our payroll costs have actually shot through the roof because we're paying on average 30% more to our employees. And most of them are in overtime. So now you're paying time and a half. So when you factor all that in, yes, we have less employees, which makes it harder to run the restaurant, and we're actually paying them more money. So it's really it's a double hit.
You just don't realize. You don't realize all the different movements that go into this. That how does it? You personally, what's your background? Is it restaurant or business?
Restaurant. So I grew up in Washington, D.C., washing dishes when I was 14. I worked for a guy who owned 4 restaurants in downtown Washington. It started out as a summer job and then became a passion of mine, and I worked for him for 6 years, going from dishwasher to food runner to busboy to line cook, eventually to the front of the house where I was a waiter and a bartender, and then got into management in Georgetown in my early 20s and just continued to follow that path until I was ready to make the leap and try my own place. And I bought my first restaurant when I was 26 years old and worked 18-hour days 3 years in a row to make it work, and then started to expand, and I haven't looked back. But it's a passion, and I think you'll find that for most good restaurateurs as they grow up in the industry. They understand it. They've worked in all the different facets of it. I'll go in on a Friday night, and if they need me to wash dishes or clean a toilet, I'm happy to do it. I've done it for 25 years, and I think that's what makes the staff respect me. And quite frankly, I'd rather be doing that stuff than sitting at the end of the bar. It's fun and get through the night faster. You show your team that you're part of them, and so the business thing actually came secondary to me. Unfortunately, I tend to spend more time in the office these days on business than I do in operations. I'd much prefer to be in operations, but the nature of what we do in dealing with lawyers and CPAs and landlords and leases and architects,
all the non-fun, boring crap.
It's really not what I got into the business to do, but it's part of the job these days.
That's funny. Well, what is new with Titan Hospitality Group? I mean, and again, you guys have Smashing Grapes, Blackwall Hitch, Blackwall Barn and Lodge. TitanHospitality.com is the main website, but SmashingGrapes.com, Blackwall Hitch Annapolis, Blackwall Hitch Alexandria.com. And then you lose the Blackwall and just call it Barn and Lodge .com up in Gambrels.
So we got a little rustic on that concept, which we love and is doing fantastic. Great feedback. So
let me say, with Blackwall Barn and Lodge, that was one of my girlfriend's and I go-to spots during the pandemic because you guys handled that so incredibly well. You had the tent out back, which was great, but the way that you reimagined the dining room with the dividers and everything else, that was one place that we walked in and we said, and it's not very convenient to our house.
Right.
I mean, it's not in my neighborhood.
Right.
So
we appreciate that.
But it was this is someplace that we can feel safe and do. You guys did an outstanding job.
I appreciate you saying that. We put a lot of time and energy and money and thought into how to provide an environment where our guests did feel safe. To answer your question, we are entering into another growth phase right now, so we're excited about that. We've signed 2 leases at the new Merriweather development by Howard Hughes in downtown Columbia, so just steps from Merriweather Post Pavilion. They're building a $400 million development, mixed use, townhomes, shops, restaurants. Our first to open will be another Blackwall Barn and Lodge, and that is slated to start construction in late August and hopefully be open by the end of the year or early into 2023. And about 6 months following that will be a Smashing Grapes right across the park there from that. So 2 brand new locations. The Barn and Lodge is an 11,000 square foot property, and then Smashing Grapes is about 6,500 square feet. And those projects have been launched and are underway, and we're working on architecture and construction now. now, and now we're in search of 1 to 2 other projects. We're looking in Baltimore County, we're looking in Howard County and Harford County, and we're also looking a little bit outside the state, so we're looking in Pennsylvania, Delaware. We really like our concepts and our brands. The feedback we've gotten is great, and now we're looking for communities that we feel that would fit in there and provide, as I was saying earlier, another dining option for people who may be underserved in the finer dining side of things and be surrounded by fast food and chain restaurants. We think there's tons of communities across the East Coast that we could go into and provide that opportunity.
Sure, and you're keeping with the same two brands, the Blackwall Hitch,
so
Blackwall Barn and Lodge.
We really look at them as 3 concepts. The Blackwall Hitch being our downtown nautical urban concept close to the water or waterfront. Blackwall Barn and Lodge being our more rustic, suburban, rural concept. And then Smashing Grapes really being a suburban bedroom community concept that can go into town centers and things like that, into underserved communities where a lot of these town centers, the developers and builders, when they build these, they go after the chain restaurants and the fast food because they want the big corporate lease guarantees. Sure. And it really, in my opinion, does a disservice to the community because you build all these great things and you've got Bed Bath & Beyond and Wegmans and all these great retailers, and then you have all these chain restaurants and you don't have any upscale independent restaurateurs. So we like those areas.
That's what I really like about, again, the Smashing Grapes. Again, it's one of the restaurants that we do frequent in Annapolis. I mean, if we can get a fire pit table, we'll jump on that in a heartbeat. But, that's the one thing that I do appreciate about it. It's different. Yeah. It's a different concept. It is not I mean, honestly, and I don't mean to diss on Applebee's or TGI Fridays or whatever, but I mean, there's no difference between the two except for maybe the decor and the name. Yeah. And there is something different about Smashing Grapes.
Yeah, so I think the challenge that you see in chain restaurants is just that. They're a chain restaurant, they have massive amount of units, and so in order to execute at a high level and be consistent across 300 units, you've really got to dumb things down, right?
You've gone to TGI Friday, okay, we need a rowing shell up here at this point.
Yeah, the onion ring has to be a frozen onion ring so that everyone can do it. We really pride ourselves on trying to be different and unique and provide a different experience across our company with the 3 concepts that we have, but also when we create new concepts, Smashing Grapes came from the concept that there wasn't something like this in this area. And we went out to California. We spent 2 weeks out there. We visited 66 different concepts in wine region out there. And we took a little bit from what we saw in all these different places and put it together and create our own coastal California concept on the East Coast, which we felt was really lacking here. And the feedback's been great. And so what does coastal California people ask? And we say, one, we have 360 bottles of wine on the wine list. We have the largest wine list in Anne Arundel County, or probably in the state, quite frankly, for that matter. So we want to give people opportunities of wine regions all over, but focused on California, obviously. And then our food is a little bit on the lighter, healthier side with no heavy sauces and things like that. It's a little bit more healthy and upscale. And so a lot of charcuterie boards and fresh fish and things like salads and things like that. And the combination between the expansive wine list, giving people an opportunity to try and taste wines from different regions, not only of the country, but of Spain and Argentina. And we've gone international in one of the sections, and people love that. So when you combine the two, kind of a unique food twist with a great wine selection in a really cool restaurant with great decor and cool lighting and outdoor patios and fire pits and things like that, it's really been successful, and the feedback has been overwhelming. And so I think we've really hit a niche that people have fallen in love with.
Well, for those that aren't aware, I mean, the Smashing Grapes are in Gambrills up at the Whitechapel Town Center. Is that
Village of Whitechapel.
Well, Village of Whitechapel. They get them all confused up there, as well as down just adjacent to the Annapolis Mall down in Annapolis. And great place for dinner, but you also can do small groups because you do have that private.
We do a ton of private events. Great area to host 30, 40 people for a birthday party, rehearsal dinner, graduation ceremony. People love that private room, and we also have 2 private outdoor areas that people can rent as well for months like this when the weather's nice.
Right. Blackwall Hitch down certainly in Annapolis does have several different private rooms ranging from little itty bitty ones to larger ones. You've got the rooftop deck as well. And actually a good friend of mine from high school, her son just got married and had their reception there.
Oh, fantastic.
Had a great time on a horribly rainy day, but it was, it
That we can't control.
Can't control that. And Blackwall Barn and Lodge is also very big on larger events, the weddings, and which is you're more geared to handle a large
We get
reception.
up to 200. We have a huge barn, hence the name, which is really upscale whitewashed walls and hardwood floors and chandeliers and air conditioning and audio video and its own bar. And we do events up to 200 there. Been a huge success. We have a wedding booked pretty much every weekend for the rest of the year, so we're excited about that. But yeah, anyone in need of a large room for a large gathering, we have a beautiful venue for you.
I remember when you did a contest to give away a wedding.
Yeah,
And
very successful.
that was one of those, that one sort of blew up, didn't it? It was sort of the unintended consequence because there was some, wasn't there an influencer somewhere that was a friend of
somebody
that turned around and sent it out to a million?
Yeah, they got a million votes or something. Yeah, I let my marketing team handle that issue, but it was really great promotion, and it was great to see the couple really deserved to the backstory. We did it twice actually, and we'll probably do it again. But it's something. It's a feel good thing. It's nice to do, and at the end of the day, it gets us a little bit of social media buzz, and that always helps the business too. So
without a doubt. Well, Titan Hospitality Group and James King, who thank you for your insight to this. You've been a wealth of information, and I think it really helps for people to understand sort of the inner workings of this. When you do get that bill that says, "What the hell what's this 3% American Express charge?" or "What's this? Why is my burger now $15?"
Right.
Hopefully, we're not going to see a $25 burger, but that's. You've been in the restaurant business forever. When did pizzas turn into flatbreads?
Great question. Probably about a decade ago, and I think that stemmed probably from a lot of culinary guys trying to figure out how to take a traditional item that everybody likes and make it a little bit more upscale and do something unique and creative with it. We sell a billion of them. People absolutely love them. I think people also feel that they're a little bit healthier on the thinner, crispier crust than eating a lot of doughy food and stuff.
So the key word in that's think?
I think it depends on which one you order, right? If you're getting artichokes and those types of things, it's not bad. But when you're piling on 3 different meats and cheeses, then I think you're getting what you asked for. But I think you can. Let's say you can have a healthy flatbread depending on what you put on top of it. So.
Fantastic. Well, you want to visit TitanHospitality.com, SmashingGrapes.com will get you to both locations, probably all 3 locations when that one opens up in Columbia, Blackwall Hitch, Annapolis, or Blackwall Hitch, Alexandria.com. And Alexandria is a great location too, right on the river and right in the old torpedo factory, isn't it?
It is, and it stares. You can see Washington D.C. and right down the river, the Washington Monument, and all the airplanes landing at National Airport. So it's a very cool location.
Yep. And then Barn and Lodge up here in Gambrels, which is the old Kaufman's place. Rest in peace. So
that's right.
Thank you so much for your time, your insight, and really congratulations for making it through this, because there were, as you probably know, there were thousands that didn't.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and hopefully we've made it through it. We still have some challenging days ahead, but we will continue to work hard and try to rebuild. And the industry as a whole is a very resilient industry, so I think we'll make it back.
This has been a bonus podcast from Ion Annapolis. Please visit us at ionannapolis.net. Follow us on Facebook at All Annapolis and on Twitter at Ion Annapolis. And if you haven't subscribed to the Daily News Brief podcast, go for it. And all of your local news will be delivered to your phone, tablet, or smart device by 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday.